everyone for being here, and thank you to everyone who has shared so far. Thank you, Tina, for sharing that awesome poem. It was so moving. Thank you, Mia, for your testimony, and Jen for your testimony. I was like trying to hold back the tears because that's so relatable. Like what women want, we want to be secure, we want to be loved. Like we're in this constant pursuit of this thing that we want. So thank you for letting me share. Like Jen said, I'm from California. I was born and raised there, San Francisco. And then I moved to Washington in 2016. I was there for 8 years, and now I'm in Bozeman, Montana. It's really awesome, because I never thought I'd be in Bozeman, Montana. Just so you know, Bozeman, the city in and of itself, is the size of this campus, the population. Like, that's crazy. So everyone knows everyone, very small town. And I'm from like San Francisco, Seattle, so it's quite an adjustment, but it's been really awesome to be there. You know, as I was thinking about the title, What Women Want, I thought, well, we want a lot of things. You know, I can give you a laundry list of things I want. Like, I want to get married, I want to have kids, I want my bills to be paid, I want to not have to worry about student loans, I want my car payment to be paid. Like, I can tell you what I want. And I thought if I were to ask any of you what you want, you could tell me what you want. No one's like, I don't know what I want in life. Well, maybe some people, right? And I thought about the Bible and what the Bible says women want. There's actually not much to it. The Bible doesn't really say this is exactly what a woman wants. But I thought about people in the Bible and what they wanted. And there's 3 women that came to mind. Well, a lot of women came to mind, but 3 specific women. There's Hannah. Hannah is known for really wanting a son. She was barren, could not give birth. So she prays and she begs God, and she's like, please God, I just want a son. She makes a vow that if God gives her a son, she would then devote him for the rest of his life to God. And so God gives her a son. And I'm like, wow, that's inspiring. She really wanted something, she prays, and then she gets it. And then there's Mary. Mary was the sibling of Lazarus. Lazarus dies, and she's like, I just really want my brother to be alive. She goes to Jesus, and she says, Jesus, if you were there, he would have never died in the first place. She just wanted her brother. Jesus feels compelled, goes and resurrects Lazarus from the dead, and she gets what she wants. I'm like, wow, this woman really wanted her brother. She prays, and she gets it. And then there's the bleeding woman. This woman was bleeding for 12 years straight. Could you imagine? Like, I can't even take 7 days straight. Like 12 years straight is crazy. And she just wanted this pain-free life. She goes to Jesus, touches his cloak, he hears her, he heals her. I'm like, wow, she wanted to be healed. She goes to Jesus, begs for it, and gets it. But I thought, that's not really relatable. Like sometimes you really want something, you go to God, and you don't get it. That's real life. Yeah. Not Hannah, Mary, and this bleeding woman. Like, yes, that happens sometimes, but most times, I wonder, what do you do when you really want something and God says no? Or God says not yet? Or God says that's not the plan? Or that's not for you? So then I thought of Bathsheba. I don't know if you guys know about Bathsheba.
Talk about it, Ingrid.
But she's messy, and I love it. She is known for being the woman who David committed adultery with. Yeah. So she's not pretty and perfect and has it all together. No, she messed up. And then she cheats on her husband. And then David, to try to cover everything up, kills her husband. Like, this is the woman we're talking about today. Someone who didn't have it all together. Someone who didn't get everything she wanted. Of course, there's a lot of things I can talk about what we want. Like I said, we want happiness, purpose, success, prosperity. I bet if I told you, I'm going to tell you how to have all these things today, you'd be like, sign me up. You'd pull out your notes and be like, yes, how do I do it? A step-by-step guide. I don't have that for you. I don't know how to do those things. But I do know that the Bible says in Proverbs 19:22, what a person desires is unfailing love. That means that what we all truly want in our heart of hearts is love. Even if you were to make a list of things that you think you want, what you really are looking for is love, whether you know it or not. And I know that we can find that in God, and I truly believe that Bathsheba found it in God. So today, my heart and my hope is that you see how much Bathsheba wanted love and how God gave her that love. It's interesting because Bathsheba in the Bible probably says maybe 3 words, so we don't really get to know what she wanted, but we can kind of conclude what she wanted based on who she was. So, like I said, Bathsheba was known as being the other woman. At face value, you can look at her story and kind of pity her, kind of feel a little sad for her. But God only knows how to write beautiful stories. He doesn't know how to write ugly stories. He's a great author. My first point today is this was not the plan. So let's go to 2 Samuel 11, 1 to 5. 2 Samuel chapter 11, 1 to 5. It says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rahab. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanliness. Then she went back home, the woman conceived, and sent word to David, saying, I am pregnant. Okay, so there's some facts I want us to gather based on the scripture. Number one, Bathsheba was purifying herself. She was taking a special kind of bath. So it's not like she was on this rooftop. Like, people can argue that she was trying to seduce David, but there's a few things here. Number one, in verse 1, it says that David was home at a time where kings go off to war. So Bathsheba knew this. She was a woman of faith. She had no reason to believe he would even be home. David was supposed to be at war, so he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. So she's taking this bath, purifying bath, and it's actually a ritual that was performed by people of God in order to cleanse themselves. So what this tells us is that Bathsheba was a woman of faith. She was actually trying to do right by God. In Leviticus 15, 19 to 20, it tells us that you have to be ceremonially clean after your menstruation. So she's trying to do right, which I think is so interesting because I'm like, okay, that tells us that she loved God and she was trying to follow the scriptures. She was trying to do what was right. So she's bathing outdoors, and this is actually not weird. This was common practice in those days. So again, she's not purposely trying to seduce David. Number two, she was the daughter of Eliab and the wife of Uriah. So what this tells us is that she was loyal to God and to David's throne. How do I know this? Eliab and Uriah were both part of David's army. Not only that, they were part of David's mighty men. So in the Bible, the mighty men were like the top guys. They were like the super soldiers. They were super loyal to God, super loyal to David. And this is what Bathsheba grew up around. She grew up around men of faith, and then she married a man of faith. And so clearly Bathsheba, she just wanted to love God. I bet when she married Uriah, she was like, yeah, I'm gonna marry this man of faith. He's gonna go fight wars, and we're gonna have children, and life's gonna be awesome. I don't think she was like little thinking, when I grow up, I want to be an adulterer and mess everything up and have a husband who commits murder.
Right.
Like, that was not the plan.
No.
That was not what she wanted. She wanted a perfect life, a loving husband, kids. She just wanted to love God and to be loved by God. And so it's interesting how there's a turn of events because David gets her pregnant. Now, again, there's a lot of arguments about how this happens. Some people say well, she was a woman, and at this time, even if you were a man and you're summoned by the king, you have no option. You have to go, right? What was she supposed to say? No. Even if she said no, he might have done it anyways, might have done what he wanted to do. So some people see her almost like a victim, she didn't really have a say in everything. Some people think, well, she has to take responsibility for what she did. She did commit adultery. The Bible doesn't really tell us, so you can kind of decide what you want to think about Bathsheba, but what we know is that she loved God. In 2 Samuel 12, a little bit later, so they have a baby, or she's pregnant rather, and we're going to pick it up in verse 15 to 18 to figure out what happens here. So 2 Samuel 12, 15 to 18, it says, after Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had born to David, and he became ill. David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and spent a night lying in sackcloth on the ground. The elders of his household stood beside him to get him from the ground, but he refused, and he would not eat any food with them. On the seventh day, the child died. David's attendants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they thought, while the child was still living, he wouldn't listen to us when we spoke to him. How can we now tell him the child is dead? He may do something desperate. And then in verse 24, it says, then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and he went to her and made love to her. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. The Lord loved him. So now Bathsheba finds herself summoned for an affair. carrying the child of a man who summoned her, widowed because of that same man's command to murder her husband, and married to him. And now she's mourning the loss of her first son. Her life was permanently altered. Again, this was not the plan. And I think Bathsheba was really, really mourning. I think she was mourning the loss of her husband. That's why David was comforting her, because she could not stop crying. She was mourning the loss of her first child. I can't even imagine how painful that must be. And she was mourning the loss of the life she thought she would have. This is a lot of heartbreak. And I can relate to this level of heartbreak and level of disappointment in life. The Bible doesn't tell us that Bathsheba cried herself to sleep every night, but I imagine that she did, because I would.
Yeah.
Life was not all that she hoped for. For me, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder at 25. And the first time I went to therapy, my therapist looked at me. Mind you, this is the first time I went to therapy, so I just tell her my life. She looks at me and she says, Ingrid, I don't know how to tell you this. And she's like, I think you've been depressed your whole life. And I didn't know what to do with that information. It felt comforting for someone to validate me and acknowledge what I had gone through. But it also felt like, no, this was not the plan. I'm not supposed to be depressed. This isn't seasonal depression. This is intense depression. It's clinical depression. It's depression that feels like you can't get out of it. And just to give you some background to my story, so you can understand, I was raised by a single mom. She was 16 when she had my brother, 18 when she had me. No idea what she was doing. She came to the United States from El Salvador as an immigrant, only spoke Spanish, was disowned by her family for having 2 children at 18, and then my dad left when I was 5. That set us up not for success. It was honestly so hard. We were constantly struggling. We were homeless multiple times, and I have very, very vivid memories of being homeless with my mom. My brother started having a lot of behavioral issues at home. It was really intense. There was one time where we're siblings, right? So I say something that set him off. He says something that set me off. We get into this little fight, and we're by a window. He grabs my head, and he's just very impulsive. So he grabs my head, and he smashes the window with my head. And we're in a 2-story building. I start tipping over. It all happens so fast and so slow. I'm tipping over. I don't know what's happening. He snaps out of it, grabs my hair, and pulls me back. And the whole window shatters. There's glass everywhere, and I'm shaking. And that's all I remember after that. I think I blacked out after that because I thought I was gonna die. There were 2 times where I walk into my brother. At this point, he's 16, pretty grown, and he's choking my mom. And the first time, I didn't know what to do, so I went to go hide. The second time, I was terrified he was gonna kill my mom. So I go and I try to get him off of my mom, and now I'm in danger. So now I have to run away from him, from my brother. And the thing is, this wasn't 1 or 2 or 3 times. This was our life. This was constant, constantly calling the cops on my own brother, constantly trying to make sure I'm safe at home. And it wasn't just abuse, it was also, there was a lot of neglect at home. My mom trying to figure out how to handle 2 kids, one with a lot of behavioral issues. And so I just kind of had to grow up. My mom's attention was divided. She had to figure out my brother and all his problems, so I could figure out myself. So I grew up really quickly. I had to figure things out, I had to figure out my emotions on my own, navigate life on my own. And one thing I've learned about trauma is that trauma isn't necessarily the experiences, it's the fact that you go through them alone. Someone could go through exactly what I went through and have people there in their corner and not have ended up with major depressive disorder. But it was the fact that I was alone that made it so hard. And at a young age, at 16, I'm trying to navigate life, trying to navigate all this hardship. And nobody tells you how to deal with things. There's no book. Well, there's the Bible, but I didn't know at the time. What do I do with all these emotions? So I turned to what I do know. I turned to alcohol, I turned to drugs, I turned to even worse things, impurity, partying, ecstasy, you name it. Now, mind you, I come from that kind of background, so I was always the good girl. I did not give my mom problems. I figured out life. So even while I was doing all this stuff, I still got straight A's. Like, one thing I was not going to do is add more burden to my mom. And so I'm trying to do this all alone. It's horrible. It's just not what I wanted. So then, at like 17, I realized this isn't what I want. What I'm not going to do is end up being like in the streets, doing things that I don't want to do. Because I was making stupid decisions, but I wasn't stupid, okay? So I decide I'm not gonna do this. So I just stopped everything. I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped partying. I swing the pendulum and I become really religious. So now I'm Team Jesus. Now I'm like, God can save you, God is everything. But unfortunately, it was very religious. So I was saying all the right things and believing the right things, but I wasn't living out the right things. All that did was it gave me an opportunity to live my sin in secret. So now it wasn't so obvious. Now I wasn't like partying and all that stuff, but behind closed doors, I didn't want to tell you what I was doing. I didn't want to tell you about the gross impurity I was in. And at 18, I met this guy. We fall into a bunch of sin together. We're impure, and he cheats on me, gets someone else pregnant while we're still together. And so I feel like I'm in this constant pursuit of like being loved, like kind of like what Dia was saying, you know, like my dad left me when I was 5, so I was like, okay, that's what men do, they leave. My brother hurt me, so I'm like, okay, that's what men do, they abuse you. And then this man cheats on me. Like, I'm like, what? What's wrong with me that I'm not lovable? What did I do wrong? I must be the problem. I'm the common denominator here. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. At 18, I was very, very crushed in spirit. I was like, if this is 18, I'm tired. I don't think I can do another 18 years. I just was so brokenhearted by where life was at. But God saved me. Luckily, at 18, I met a woman who came up to me and asked me if I wanted to study the Bible. Again, I already knew about Jesus, but I didn't know Jesus. I only knew about him. I studied the Bible on March 3rd, 2013. I got baptized, and God just turned my life around. He turned everything around. Yes, it wasn't necessarily what I planned, but God had a better plan. And I believe it was the same with Bathsheba. This was not the plan she had, but God had a better plan. That leads me to my second point, a better plan. In 2 Samuel 12:24, we learn that Bathsheba gave birth to a son named Solomon, and that the Lord loved him. Now, everything in the Bible is there for a reason. Like, it doesn't say the Lord accepted him. It said the Lord loved him. Like, there's a reason it points that out. And if you don't know who Solomon is, he's a king. He's known for being one of the wisest people to ever live. King Solomon. Bathsheba gives birth to this king, and then later, he becomes part of the lineage of Jesus. So Bathsheba is one of only 5 women in the lineage of Jesus that's mentioned. That's incredible. In the Bible, it's very rare that a woman is even listed in a lineage of anyone. So for God to choose her to give birth to King Solomon, a guy who writes incredible scriptures like Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, like God chose her for such a greater purpose than she could have ever imagined. You know, I think that for me, at 18, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I think that life was very, very hard. So I wanted to make life easier for other people. So I'm like, okay, my life's been hard. Let's make a purpose out of it. What I want is to turn this ugly story into something beautiful. And I didn't know that God could do that. So I was trying to figure it out how to do it myself. So in 2013, I pursued a bachelor's degree in social work. And I was kind of debating between social work and like business, because I thought business sounds like money, and money sounds good, you know? Social work, you're not gonna make a lot of money. So I wrestled with this for a little bit, but in my heart, I was like, I just wanna help women. I wanna help kids. I wanna be a mentor. I just wanna change lives. And so I went to school, got my bachelor's in social work, was in the field for a little bit. And then in 2016, I decided to get my bachelor's in ministry. Now, getting my bachelor's in ministry, it was more so for the knowledge. I just wanted to know about the Bible, theology, all that cool stuff. I didn't really want ministry. I just wanted to have Bible knowledge. So then after that, I was like, let's go back to school. So I went to go finish my master's, got my master's in social work with a concentration in therapy. And so my goal was to do therapy with children and families. I did that for a little bit. I saw a lot how it impacted children and families. I was able to see kids who had anxiety and depression overcome those things and obviously relate to them coming from that background. And I really felt like I was making a change in their life and in their mental health. But I always felt like as much as I'm making a change in their life right now, there was always something like missing and I couldn't figure that out. And God opened a door for me to go into the full-time ministry, and I realized that for me, that was a greater purpose. Not that one is better than the other, but you know, the thing with therapy and social work and all of that is it changes someone's life for a little bit, but God changes your life forever. You look at Bathsheba's life, and God didn't change it just for a little bit. He turned this ugly, terrible story of murder and adultery into a beautiful story of her being in the lineage of Jesus, the King of Kings. What? She could have never written that story herself. Yeah. She could have never thought like, yeah, I'm gonna give birth to the son of Solomon, King Solomon, and he's gonna give birth to so-and-so, and you know, I'm gonna be in the bloodline of Jesus. Right. She could have never thought that. And I think about how God writes beautiful stories and how I want to be able to help women discover that story that God has already written for them. I want to share a story here about a professional golfer who was hired by a king to come and teach him how to play golf. Because you're a king, so you can hire whoever you want, whatever you want to do. He sends a private jet to pick up this pro golfer, flies him over, and has him spend a few days teaching him how to play golf. Well, at the end of the trip, he's like super grateful. He's like, wow, I'm grateful. How can I thank you? How can I bless you for teaching me how to play golf? And the professional golfer says, you know, what I do, I collect golf clubs. So if you want to send me one, I'd be super grateful. The king agrees, gets his address. And so this man flies home. Every day he checks his mailbox. He's expecting a golf club. And he's thinking, I wonder what this golf club is going to look like. It might be all gold. It might have diamonds. I mean, it's coming from a king, so who knows what it's going to look like. And so he's waiting and waiting, and nothing comes. Nothing. So then he's like, all right, well, guess nothing. Maybe he forgot or something. And then one day he checks the mail, and he opens up this envelope. And in it, it says, you are now the owner of a 50-acre, 18-hole golf club. Oh. Yeah. So God, this king gives him a whole club instead of a golf club. Wow. Because that's how kings think. They think differently. And we serve Jesus. That's how he thinks. Ephesians says God wants to give you more than you can ask or imagine. And I believe that that's what he did for Bathsheba. He gave her more than she could have ever thought of, more than she even wanted. He gave her this unfailing display of love through putting her in the lineage of Jesus. And I believe that's what God has done for me. He has shown me unfailing love. Everything else will fail you. You're going to fail yourself. Yeah. People are going to fail you. Your career might fail you. But God doesn't know how to fail. Like, that's not in his vocabulary. 1 Corinthians 13 says God never fails. Love never fails. And really what we desire is unfailing love because God has put that in our hearts. And you are going to constantly try to find that in something else, and you won't be able to unless you look to God. Because God can fulfill that desire. Psalm 139:13 says, he created your inmost being. He knit you together in your mother's womb. He created you. He knows what you want, and he will give it to you. The story's not over for some of you. I know you can look at your life and be like, this is as good as it gets. No, it gets better. You don't even know what God has planned for you, but it is way better than you can ask or imagine. Thank you for letting me share.